I just want to say that like Democrats did a lot of things wrong over the last 4 years, and sometimes somehow ended up in a circumstance where people just did not trust them to be able to deliver real results for their lives and their families' lives. It's as simple as that. When people came down to make a decision about what is best for my family or my community or my prosperity, Democrats, I don't trust them. Now, that said, it wasn't a wildly landslide of an election. I heard Donald Trump yesterday lying through his teeth, claiming he had the biggest victory. He didn't get the majority of votes. He got more popular votes than Kamala Harris, but he didn't. The majority of Americans voted against him.
In this clip from the David Pakman show, I have a question for all of you. Have you ever seen a guest walk onto a show, say a little too much truth, and suddenly the host looks like they want to disappear? Well, that's exactly what happened with this guy, Cory Booker, who was supposed to be on Pakman's side, but just absolutely torched the left's entire messaging strategy. It was so bad, even Pakman was scrambling to make sense of it. So let's check out this clip where all of this takes place, and of course, I'll be giving you my unfiltered take.
But that said, this was a time that I believe if Americans really felt the Democrats had their best interest on the issues that mattered most to them, we would have resoundingly won that election. I do want to point out it had mixed results. There are a lot of my colleagues in the Senate who won in states that also Donald Trump won. That rarely happens where in a state that a president won, the Senate candidate of that president's party lost. So, in many ways, the brand of people like Tammy Baldwin, the brand of people like Ruben Gallego, the feeling people had about those leaders was, I trust you to have my back or my family's back. And so, in this time where Trump is walking in, a lot of people want to know what's the anti Trump strategy. And my focus is not the anti Trump strategy. My focus is fighting for Americans, doing things that make them safer, stronger, and more prosperous. The Democratic Party should define themselves by what they stand for, not by who they stand against. And if Donald Trump comes after your health care, if he comes after your Social Security, if he comes after your Medicare, if he comes after your public education, those are the things we should fight for because we're fighting for the American people. We're fighting for issues. But I'm tired of this tribal community, that country that we live in, where parties are defining themselves in contrast to each other. Now, that said, as a guy who beat a big political machine in the state of New Jersey to win the seat, we had to have really good strategy electorally as well. And I think, as I'm telling the United States senators, and I've taken on a position in leadership in my Senate Democratic caucus, is guys, you are not communicating or talking to voters because you think that we live in a communication world that is where it was in the 1980s. The reality is most voters get their information from these things. I spend most of my time. I've cut cable, so I'm not seeing your ads that you're putting up. We have to become a much more digitally aware set of leadership, and it's hard. Chuck Schumer, who's allowed me to ascend to this position, he and I had long conversations. I said, Chuck, you still have a flip phone, sir. We've got to start talking more about how to be on these platforms where voters are getting much of their news and information, and then having the mechanisms with which to communicate in addition to the right message.
Yeah, no kidding. The left still thinks people are sitting down to watch CNN like it's 1985. Meanwhile, Trump is out here hopping on Rogan's podcast, vibing with the Nelk Boys, and running literal meme warfare on Twitter. The internet has passed the Democrats by, and now they're shocked no one under 40 listens to them. MAGA's entire online presence is dominant because it actually feels organic. Their influencers are real people who say what they think unfiltered. The left? Everything is staged, scripted, and approved by some HR department to make sure it checks all the right woke boxes. You can feel the corporate approved nonsense oozing out of every quote-unquote relatable post they try to make. I mean, you can even look at Trump's meme game versus Biden's. Trump's team drops bangers that get millions of shares in seconds, and Biden's social media, on the other hand, looks like it was written by Microsoft Word Assistant that just learned how to use emojis. Have you ever seen their TikToks? It's just a bunch of painfully unfunny interns awkwardly trying to explain why giving your entire paycheck to the government is actually a good thing. And these people still don't get it. Corey has tried to warn them that they're losing the internet war, but I guarantee you by the time they take action on it, it'll be 2035 and they'll still be wondering why their radio ads aren't getting traction. Very important point, and I agree with it completely. Let's check out his others.
And I, for one, believe the message is not the resistance. The message is you will see me every single day getting up and doing everything I can so you can keep more of your hard-earned dollars, so that you can have better health care, that you can have a nation where we don't spray chemicals on your foods that are banned in other countries, that we can fight for housing and to make housing more affordable so that the very idea of the American dream can be achievable for your generation. That's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear how much I might hate Donald Trump or what have you. That to me is the wrong message.
You mentioned the communication strategy and the smartphones, and I think this is very interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to the White House and met with now former President Biden and some of the communication officials to do a sort of like what went wrong sort of thing from my perspective as someone on kind of this side of the independent media communication side. And what was most alarming maybe was not that they didn't know what went wrong. It was that they did just a few weeks after the election. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about was that this MAGA world very successfully built kind of this space where it's cool to be part of it, right? Trump as a candidate hung out for hours with the Nelk boys and Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan and the political podcasts and the non-political podcasts. And one of the things that I worry about is if in September of 2028, I start getting the emails from different staffers and communications people, it's kind of too late. And so in a way, if there's something they did right starting in 2021, was they started really building out this ecosystem then, and the growth of Turning Point USA and the Daily Wire and all of these organizations. Is there some way to organize this on the left, not as a sort of acute resistance in time, but more as like, we need 4 years of this to be in the right place 4 years from now? I don't know who organizes that.
Well, again, this idea that the Democratic Party is some hegemonic command and control top-down organization is just wrong. We all know that. There
Right.
are the Democratic Governors Association, the Democratic House members have an organization, and so on and so forth.
I mean, listen, the question that David basically just asked is, how do we copy the right? And that's the whole takeaway here. They don't have an actual message that people connect with, so their solution is just to mimic what's working for conservatives. But the problem is they can't replicate it because they fundamentally don't understand why it works in the first place. Conservative media is winning online because it allows real conversations to happen. There's debate, there's humor, there's actual discussion. The left, they thrive on censorship. They don't want a culture of discussion, they want a monologue. And that's why every time one of their influencers or politicians gets pressed with actual questions, they either crumble or resort to name calling. I mean, when was the last time you saw a mainstream left-wing personality willingly step into a debate they didn't control? You don't see Biden sitting down with Rogan. You don't see AOC hopping on Lex Friedman's podcast. Why? Because they can't handle unfiltered discussion. Their entire strategy depends on pre-screened interviews and softball questions from journalists who are already on their side. Meanwhile, Trump will walk into the lion's den, take all the heat, and still walk out looking like a rock star. That's why they respect him, even the ones that don't like him. And now they're trying to figure out how to build their own version of quote-unquote MAGA media. Good luck with that. You can't force authenticity, you can't fake passion, and most importantly, you can't win over the people when your entire brand is built on telling them they're racist, privileged, and responsible for every problem in the world. That's why every time they try to build an edgy, cool, left-wing media movement, it flops harder than CNN+. So, what did we witness here? A rare moment of honesty from a Democrat on David Pakman's show, and you could feel the panic setting in. They know they're losing the messaging war, they know the culture is shifting, but instead of fixing their policies or actually listening to the people, their solution is maybe we should do what the conservatives are doing. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think the left can actually turn things around, or is it already too late? Let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to give us a like and subscribe, and of course, we'll see you in the next one.